Welcome to another event with Being at Home with George. I'm not sure sometimes what to call it, whether to call it an episode or just a plain conversation, but it is an opportunity for us to share, or for me to share, about how to be in this time of COVID, as well as all of the other things that are going on in terms of the racial injustice and the protest, and also I was just reading something about in Florida. Now they're concerned about the storms that we're getting into hurricane season, and so there's a whole other dimension. So there's a lot of uncertainty happening. And of course, here, what we try to do, or what we do, is we talk about the possibility of holding the hurt, and that also includes the anticipation of things happening that are not so helpful, as well as generating the hope. And it's one thing to talk about hope, but there's another thing to really feel it, especially now, having been in this crisis for a little more than 4.5 months. And I can feel sort of a fatigue set in because of all of the turmoil, all of the uncertainties around opening up and then closing or restricting certain activities, whether or not children are going to be able to go back to school, and if they are, how's that going to look? I know I work with a women's field hockey team, and they were told last week that their season, the fall season, is canceled. The league they play in had canceled the fall season, and the only hope they have of playing will be in the spring. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, and I have friends that are coaches or work at universities, and there's just a lot of uncertainty around that, not to mention some of the things that are coming up in terms of the federal support for folks that are having trouble paying their rents and their mortgages. And tomorrow, I believe, is the last day before the moratorium is off of evictions. And so there's 12 million people that are in jeopardy just around that. And then if you top that off, another week of over 1 million folks filing for unemployment, and then the pandemic unemployment assistance program has 1 week left, and according to some in Congress, they want to either eliminate the extra $600 or drop it down to $100. And I'm sure a lot of folks need that money because the jobs aren't there. And even though some of them may get jobs, a lot of them don't. And we still need support for that, not to mention the support that the cities and the schools and the first responders need in terms of police, fire, and hospital, and on and on. And so I can feel that. And so what is needed is a place of rest, finding a place of rest. And I like to refer to it as the eye of the hurricane, that we all have this quiet place within us. And Joseph Campbell talked about this in his series, The Power of Myth, and also in the Power of Myth book, he talks about there's a place of rest that we all have. And when he talks about athletic competition, is that when the athlete is in championship form, the athlete operates out of this place of rest or this quietness. And when the athlete is not able to perform properly, which means the athlete, she is driven by fear or desire and not just really being in the moment and being present and experiencing the joy of just competing, of being, of expressing oneself, that it's a totally different ball game, if you will. So we're coming from fear, and we're in that fight, flight, or freeze, and there's no rest. We're in a high state of arousal for the most part. And so the idea is that we have this place of rest inside of us, and we need to be able to access it. And so on one level, we talk about how to generate hopeful thoughts and to be able to deal with the crises or with all of the uncertainties. And so on one level, it reminds me of the idea of crisis having two meanings, one meaning being danger, and the other meaning being opportunity. And so there's an opportunity here. So we can't, on one level, we can't go back to the way things were, because things have changed. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of anxiety about that, a lot of sadness, a mourning, a grieving of that. But at the same time, there's opportunity to build something better or to make something better. But unless we have a place of rest, and even though I'm talking about it inside of us internally, also, if people are homeless or if they don't have food to eat, it's very hard to have a place of rest. And I would say we need a place of rest even more in terms of being able to be in that championship form of being able to say, okay, this is the situation. What's the next move? How can I address this issue that I'm dealing with, especially if the government's not there to help me? Then I'm going to have to rely on family and friends, but I have to be in my right mind and be able to see clearly exactly what my options are, even though I'm hoping for the best and hoping for the better angels to impact the Congress so that there's a little bit more empathy, compassion, so that they're willing to lend a helping hand to folks who just need a little help. And so I'm feeling that. I'm feeling this it's like a fatigue that we've been at it for a while. And as soon as we get over one hump, it seems like another obstacle replaces the previous one. And so this idea of finding that what I call the eye of the hurricane, where there's a space, even though there's turmoil and there's whirlwinds, we can stay in the center space. And how we do that is we think about it, we talk about it, we generate hope so that mentally we can feel it. But in terms of actually finding that space, we have to be able to practice some type of activity that's going to allow us to be still and know. And so sometimes just as simple as just sitting and breathing and knowing it, or just asking for help, or just saying, okay, what are my options? But also just realizing that we have to create some space between stimulus and response. And the way we do that is we start to look at things in a non-reactive manner. So we have to cultivate this ability to be in this, what I call relaxed receptivity. And so we're just looking at, well, what is going on here and what are my options? And when we're in survival mode, we're not able to do that. We're reacting and we're talking about, oh my God, I'm going to lose the house. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't have a job. And all of that may be true to some extent or to a real extent. Yet there's this ability to stay calm or just understand that this being in a place of rest or getting some rest so that we can fight the fight, so we can generate the hope and we can make decisions. And some of the decisions may not be so appealing, but yet they have to be made. And so on some level, as a country, we have to make our wishes known to the powers at the helm, which would be Congress for the most part. And there has to be, maybe we need to write them and call them and tell them that we need this support. There are a lot of people that still need support. This pandemic is not going away, and that we need some more support, and we need to figure out how we can get to a place where maybe it's up to having a change in the people who are making these decisions so that we can have a path forward where we can create jobs for everyone. We can create space for people to be themselves. And we want to get to a place where there's equal justice under the law. There's a place where we start to address these inequities and all of the violence perpetrated against folks. And even to the degree in Portland, you had mothers that were standing in the way of the protesters and they got tear gas. So how is that possible? We have these folks that are armed and unidentified and having on military fatigues and perpetrating violence. How can that be? And how can we not have a response appropriate for that, to say that is not okay? And so there's so many things going on that are unsettling, and yet we feel powerless or there's no guarantee that they'll be held accountable, because we have some folks who are not willing to do their job. And once again, we have the election coming up, so we have to really keep our heads and be clear about who we elect and who we put in places that are going to be more sensitive and more helpful to everyone who is suffering right now, because we all are hurting. Even though some of us may have money coming in and may have a roof over our head, there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. And even with that, we're susceptible to being sick, or being, coming down with some ailment, or knowing family members. So it's really all about finding a place of rest and understanding that in spite of everything that's going on, we still have this place of rest inside, and we have to practice that by prayer and meditation, by sitting and thinking about things in a thoughtful manner, coming from love, not coming from fear or from survival mode. Because on some level, on a cellular level, we're either in survival mode or growth mode. And so we're in survival mode. We need to understand we're in survival mode. How do I get in growth mode? I focus on what I can control, focus on what is possible, versus focusing on what I'm not getting, and the fear and how that's going to continue, not the awful lies. So there's opportunities out there, and there are a lot of people that are having meditation apps or programs where people can come and talk and support each other. And even in myself, with the process I've been engaged in with writing my book, The Mindful Athlete: Secrets to Pure Performance. And about a year ago, I developed an online course on the Mindful Athlete: Secrets to Pure Performance, and that we're actually relaunching that actually tonight, so that will be available for some folks. But my intention with relaunching it now has to do with developing a virtual community, and people who are in the 6-week intensive will really be able to create that space between stimulus and response to access that eye of the hurricane. And in the midst of activity, how can we be at rest or be at ease in spite of the challenges that are before us? And so we need help, and we need teachings and conversations that are consistent with being able to access that place of rest that's inside. That's all.